January 7th, 2024. A rural county in Hunan Province, China. A crane lowers the first steel module onto an empty concrete pad. January 11th, 2024. 4 days later. A 26-story residential tower stands on that same pad, wired, plumbed, furnished. 208 apartments ready to move into. That's not a rendering. That's not a time-lapse trick. That's a real building, and it's called the Jingdu Holan Building. It was built by a Chinese company called Broad Group, using a construction method that skips almost everything you think of when you picture a construction site. No cement trucks, no months of bricklaying, no scaffolding wrapped around a half-finished shell for a year. Just modules arriving on trucks, stacking together like oversized shipping containers, because that's basically what they are. And here's the part that should actually get your attention. This technology is coming to the United States. Broad Group's American arm has confirmed active project plans in Ohio, Texas, and California. So today, we're going to break down exactly how a 26-story tower goes up in 5 days, whether the claims actually hold up, and why this might be one of the most consequential and most contested construction stories of the decade. To understand why this moment matters, you have to go back 17 years to a disaster. In May 2008, a magnitude 8.0 earthquake struck Sichuan province in China, killing an estimated 69,000 people. Entire concrete apartment blocks collapsed in seconds. Among the people who watched the aftermath was Zhang Yue, the founder of a Hunan-based air conditioning and industrial equipment company called Broad Group. According to the company's own account, Zhang concluded that concrete construction, cast in place, reliant on manual labor and inconsistent quality control, was fundamentally fragile. His answer was to found a subsidiary, Broad Sustainable Building, dedicated to a radically different idea. Build steel structures almost entirely inside a factory, where quality control is constant, and simply assemble them on site. The early demonstrations were built for shock value as much as anything else. In 2012, Broad broke ground on a planned 838-meter super tall tower in Changsha called the Sky City, intended to briefly outheight the Burj Khalifa. It never got regulatory approval and was never built, worth being upfront about since it's one of the company's more famous failures. But the following years produced real, verified results. In 2015, the company's Mini Sky City, a 57-story, 204-meter tower in Changsha, went up in 19 days. That building still stands and is independently documented, including on its own Wikipedia entry citing contemporary press coverage. By June 2021, the company had refined the process further. A 10-story apartment block in Changsha, built under Broad's living building system, was assembled in 28 hours and 45 minutes. Confirmed at the time by CNN, DeZine, and Global Construction Review, among others. Corrected. Some early online summaries of this story describe the 2021 Changsha project as an 11-story building. The majority of contemporary reporting, CNN, DeZine, the Global Construction Review, and Broad's own materials, consistently describes it as 10 stories. This script uses the majority-sourced figure. Then came January 2024. And the Jingdu Holan Building, the project driving the latest wave of international attention and the one we're going to spend most of this video unpacking. So how does a 26-story building actually go up in 5 days? The honest answer is that almost none of the actual construction, in the traditional sense, happens at the building site at all. Broad's current system is marketed under the name Holan Building. The idea is simple to describe, even though the engineering behind it isn't. Build the apartment almost completely inside a factory, then ship the finished box to the site and bolt it into place. Each module is built to the footprint of a standard 40-foot high-cube shipping container, roughly 12 meters long, 2, 4 meters wide, and 3 meters tall. That sizing isn't accidental. It means every module can travel on an ordinary flatbed truck or a standard container ship anywhere in the world, without triggering the oversized load permits that would otherwise slow down interstate or international transport. Inside the factory, before a module ever leaves the floor, workers install the electrical wiring, the plumbing, the interior walls, the flooring, and, according to the company, in many cases, the fixtures and even furniture. Everything happens under one roof, using a standardized, repeatable process, rather than being subject to weather, inconsistent subcontractor quality, or a crew simply not showing up that day. By the time a module reaches the construction site, there's very little actual building left to do. Cranes lift each unit into position, crews bolt it to its neighbors and connect the utility interfaces: power, water, data. For the Jingdu Holan project specifically, Broad's own USA marketing materials note that structural beams are now built directly into the module's flooring system at the factory, which means there's no on-site welding at all, only bolting. The material that makes this possible at genuine high-rise scale is something Broad calls B-core. It's a structural sandwich panel, two stainless steel plates separated by an array of stainless steel tubes fused between them. Broad has stated publicly, including to outlets like Dezeen and the Global Construction Review, that this panel design is roughly 10 times lighter and 100 times stronger than conventional floor plates. Flagged. This 10 times lighter, 100 times stronger figure comes directly from Broad Group's own marketing and company spokespeople. It has been repeated consistently by the company since at least 2021, but it is a company claim, not a figure independently verified by a peer-reviewed structural engineering study in the sources available. Treat it as Broad's stated specification, not an independently audited benchmark. What that combination does, in practical terms, is remove the weight penalty that would normally force engineers to overbuild the structure to support itself, which is exactly what lets modules stack this high, this fast, without the kind of heavy on-site reinforcement that would otherwise slow the whole process down. Now let's look at the specific numbers behind the Jingdu Holon building itself, because they're genuinely striking even by Broad's own unusual track record. The tower covers roughly 14,000 square meters. It contains 208 individual apartments, 8 68 square meter units per floor, across 26 floors served by 4 elevators. All of it, structure, utilities, interior finishing, completed between January 7th and January 11th, 2024. One company press release circulated through Newsware. Com cites a slightly different figure of 15,000 square meters for the same building. China Daily and the Modular Building Institute both independently report 14,000 square meters. So this script uses that figure as the better sourced number, but the discrepancy is worth flagging. About 100 workers using one mobile crane and one tower crane completed the assembly working in alternating shifts, reportedly through heavy fog and rain, according to company statements, without a recorded safety incident. Li Shun, general manager of Broad Group Holon, has publicly stated that the building is earthquake resistant because stainless steel performs more consistently under stress than cast concrete, and that the insulation system, 5 inches of rock wool combined with multi-pane windows and an energy recovery ventilation system, can cut air conditioning costs by as much as 90%. Flagged. Both the earthquake resistance and the 90% energy savings figures are company claims relayed through China Daily and Broad's own marketing, not figures confirmed by an independent structural or energy audit in the available sourcing. They're plausible, given the materials involved, but they haven't been independently verified here. One more detail worth including, because it's almost more interesting than the speed. Broad states that the entire building can be unbolted, loaded back onto trucks, and reassembled somewhere else. If that holds up under real-world use, it turns a 26-story apartment tower from a fixed, immovable asset into something closer to a relocatable product, which is a genuinely unusual idea for permanent housing. It's worth pausing on why that relocatable claim matters beyond novelty. Traditional high-rise construction treats a building as a permanent, site-specific investment. The land and the structure are financially inseparable. If Broad's bolt-together system genuinely allows a tower to be disassembled and moved, that decouples the building from the land underneath it in a way conventional concrete or welded steel construction simply can't. For governments managing temporary housing needs, disaster relief, workforce housing near a project with a defined lifespan, military or industrial installations, that changes the underlying financial math considerably. A building stops being a permanently sunk cost tied to one parcel of land and starts behaving more like a large piece of equipment that happens to be shaped like a residential tower. Independent visitors have offered some limited, informal validation of the finished product too. Tony Frost, a New Zealand-based modular building specialist, reportedly spent a week living inside an earlier 11-story Holon building in Changsha and described the structure as feeling sturdy, almost like a concrete structure, with a notably capable water system, according to comments relayed through the Modular Building Institute. His main criticism was cosmetic, involving interior colors and finished textures rather than anything structural. That's a useful, if limited, independent data point, a first-hand account from someone with technical modular construction expertise, rather than only company marketing. This isn't Broad's only recent project, and understanding the pattern matters more than any single showcase building. In October 2024, Broad Group erected a 12-story, 24-unit apartment building on the island of Mindanao in the Philippines in just 9 days. According to Li Shun, deputy general manager of Broad's Holon subsidiary, roughly 95% of that project's total labor happened inside a Chinese factory, leaving only about 5% to be completed on site in the Philippines. Through traditional construction methods, industry estimates cited by Chinese state media put an equivalent project at 12 to 18 months. That kind of capability, according to Li, didn't happen overnight. Broad Group has reportedly invested more than $1 billion over multiple years, specifically developing this manufacturing pipeline. The factory tooling, the standardized processes, and the logistics needed to make rapid modular construction repeatable rather than a one-off engineering stunt. Note, the $1 billion cumulative investment figure comes from Chinese state media reporting, Xinhua, China Daily, People's Daily, relaying Broad Group's own statements. No independent third-party audit of this figure was found in available sourcing. It should be treated as a company-reported total. The international rollout hasn't stopped there. In October 2025, Broad shipped modular components from its Yueyang City facility in Hunan Province to the United Arab Emirates for another Holon project. That shipment became a small case study in its own right. Local customs authorities reportedly built a dedicated fast-track clearance process specifically for these exports, cutting processing time by more than 10 days and reducing logistics costs by roughly 3,000 yuan, about $440 per shipping container. That's not a small detail. Government logistics infrastructure, adapting specifically to speed up one private company's export pipeline, tells you how seriously Chinese authorities are treating this as strategic industrial policy, not a niche construction gimmick. That reading is reinforced domestically. Shanghai has released an action plan specifically promoting prefabricated and intelligent construction methods with financial incentives attached, and similar supportive policies have emerged in Beijing, Guangdong, and Shaanxi province. Chinese state media reporting from mid-2026 indicates city and district level governments have been directed to actively promote industrialized construction methods going forward, and Broad isn't slowing down its ambitions domestically either. According to People's Daily and Xinhua reporting from 2026, the company has design plans, including completed wind tunnel testing, according to a company staff member, for a 258-story, 1,037-meter Holon Tower in what's described as a major overseas tourist city, targeted for 2027. Flagged. This 258-story, 1,037-meter project is described in Chinese state media as being in the design and testing phase, not under construction. Treat this as a stated company plan and future projection, not a confirmed or completed project. Now, how big is the market this all sits inside? Independent industry research firms, Fortune Business Insights, Grandview Research, and Markets among them, place the global modular construction market somewhere between roughly $95 billion and $110 billion in recent annual activity, depending on methodology, with most projections showing continued growth through the early 2030s, driven by housing shortages, labor costs, and sustainability targets. The $95 billion figure, specifically cited in Chinese state media coverage of Broad's expansion, sits comfortably within that independently estimated range, which is a useful sanity check on an otherwise company-driven narrative. Here's where this stops being simply an interesting engineering story and becomes something with direct stakes for American viewers. Broad Group USA, based in New Jersey, has confirmed active project plans in Ohio, Texas, and California. Sunny Wang, president of Broad USA, has stated publicly through this Modular Building Institute that there's no theoretical height ceiling for the system given the strength of the materials involved. We are leveraging stainless steel, which is strong enough that we can go as high as we can design. Corrected. The original framing of this story referred to the American subsidiary president as Sunny Wang. Or, multiple independent sources, the Modular Building Institute, Broad USA's own website, and LinkedIn, consistently identify him as Sunny Wang, president and general manager of Broad USA. Notably, Broad's American presence isn't brand new. The company has been pursuing U.S. projects since at least 2016, when Broad Group USA General Manager Sunny Wang discussed plans for an American prefabricated skyscraper by the end of 2019, a target that came and went without that specific project materializing. As of 2024, Broad USA's own materials describe a signing ceremony for what the company calls the first Holon building in North America, planned near Akron, Ohio, a milestone, but still short of a completed American tower. Flagged. As of the most recent verifiable reporting available, no Broad Group Holon building has been completed and occupied on U.S. soil. References to Ohio, Texas, and California projects describe agreements, plans, and a groundbreaking signing, not finished buildings. This is a meaningful distinction the original framing blurred. Why does that distinction matter so much? Because the real obstacles facing this technology in America are structurally different from anything Broad has encountered in China, the Philippines, or the UAE. Start with building codes. American codes vary by state, county, and often by individual city, and they tend to be enforced with a rigor that doesn't have a direct equivalent in the markets Broad has operated in so far. A modular system engineered and certified under Chinese standards doesn't automatically qualify for use in Ohio, Texas, or California. Each jurisdiction will likely require its own review, testing, and certification process, and that regulatory pathway alone could realistically take considerably longer than the 5 days it takes to assemble one of these towers. Then there's labor. The American construction industry operates under a fundamentally different labor relations landscape than China's. Established trade unions, apprenticeship pipelines, and decades of negotiated labor protections that shape how U.S. construction projects are staffed. A method that moves roughly 95% of total labor into an offshore factory is likely to face real scrutiny from American labor organizations concerned about the impact on domestic construction jobs. An entirely different dynamic than what Broad encountered expanding into the Philippines or the UAE, and there's a legitimate, unresolved question about performance in different climate conditions. A modular tower engineered and tested primarily against China's climate zones needs real independent verification that it performs against hurricane conditions in coastal Texas, seismic activity in California, and freeze-thaw cycles across much of Ohio before insurers, lenders, and buyers are likely to fully trust the technology at scale. None of that means the technology doesn't work. It means the gap between demonstrated in China and certified and trusted at scale in America is considerably wider than the 5-day headline suggests. It's also worth being honest that modular construction isn't new to the U. U.S. American modular builders have existed for decades. A supportive housing facility in Brooklyn, New York, completed 65 units using modular construction, with 6 full stories assembled in just 12 days. Genuinely fast by conventional standards, even if it doesn't match Broad's most extreme showcase numbers. University dormitory projects across the country have used similar methods, specifically to compress timelines ahead of academic year deadlines. What appears to differentiate Broad specifically isn't the basic concept. It's the combination of extreme speed and the stainless steel B-core system the company argues enables taller buildings than most existing American modular systems currently support, which have generally topped out in the 6 to 10-story mid-rise range. So where does this actually go from here? There's a genuinely important, still unanswered question sitting underneath all of Broad's American announcements. Will these modules actually be manufactured domestically, using American factory workers under American labor standards? Or will they continue to be built in China and simply shipped over for final on-site assembly, the same model used in the Philippines and the UAE? That distinction changes the entire framing of this story. If Broad builds or licenses manufacturing capacity inside the United States, this starts to resemble a genuine technology transfer, not unlike how foreign automakers eventually built assembly plants across the American South, creating real domestic manufacturing jobs while introducing techniques that originated elsewhere. If the modules keep arriving from Chinese factories for on-site bolting only, this starts to look, from a labor and trade policy perspective, considerably more like importing finished housing units than building an American manufacturing partnership, regardless of how individual project announcements get framed publicly. Broad's own public statements about Ohio, Texas, and California haven't fully clarified this yet. It's the single most consequential open question in the entire story, and it's one that will only get answered once construction on these specific American projects actually begins, rather than just gets announced. Zoom out, and there's a broader pattern worth naming. China is increasingly treating manufacturing efficiency itself as an exportable product, not just the physical goods that manufacturing produces. Broad isn't selling America a building. It's attempting to sell America a manufacturing process, refined over roughly 15 years of domestic Chinese development, now packaged for export into existing global shipping and logistics infrastructure. That's a meaningfully different competitive strategy than simply manufacturing goods more cheaply and shipping them abroad. It's exporting the underlying industrial capability itself. Whether that bet pays off for Broad specifically depends heavily on how it navigates the regulatory, labor, and cultural obstacles we just walked through. But regardless of how this one company's American expansion unfolds, the broader pattern, advanced Chinese manufacturing processes packaged as a direct, exportable capability, is worth watching across other industries too, not just construction. There's also a timeline worth being realistic about, even in Broad's fastest, most cooperative environment, its home province of Hunan, with a factory nearby and local government actively streamlining logistics. The company still needed roughly 15 years of iterative development, described by the Modular Building Institute as the 16th generation of the Holon concept, before reaching the Jingdu Holon building's 5-day result. That's an important detail for anyone assuming the American rollout will simply replicate Chinese speed on arrival. Certification, code compliance, insurance underwriting, and union negotiations in Ohio, Texas, and California are new variables. Broad hasn't had to solve anywhere else, and each one individually has historically taken American construction projects months or years to resolve, independent of how fast the physical assembly itself eventually becomes. Here's the honest bottom line. The underlying engineering here is legitimately impressive, and it's not an exaggeration to call it a genuine achievement. A 26-story, fully finished residential tower assembled in 5 days, verified by China Daily, the Modular Building Institute, and independent outlets that toured earlier Broad projects is a real and repeatable process, not a marketing stunt. At the same time, it would be a mistake to assume this technology simply lands in Ohio, Texas, and California, and immediately starts reshaping American housing at the same pace we've seen in China. The regulatory approval timeline alone could stretch into years. The labor and manufacturing location questions are genuinely unresolved. Not minor paperwork details, but the difference between a real domestic job story and a housing import story. What I find most interesting here isn't really the 5 days. It's what this signals about how Chinese manufacturing advantages are increasingly being packaged as directly exportable capability, rather than staying confined to goods made in China and shipped elsewhere. If Broad's American expansion succeeds, even partially, it represents a meaningfully different front in how Chinese industrial capability reaches American markets, through direct technology and process transfer, not just trade in finished goods. So here's what I want to know from you. If a modular tower like this one passed every single American safety and building code requirement, would you actually want to live in it? Or does something about a building assembled this fast make you instinctively less confident in its long-term durability? I think there's a genuine, honest split in how people react to that question, and I want to know where you land. Drop your answer in the comments. I read everyone. If you want to keep following exactly how this American expansion unfolds, along with every other major shift happening across China's manufacturing, technology, and construction industries, that's exactly what this channel covers every single week. Hit subscribe so you don't miss the next update, because between the Philippines, the UAE, and now Ohio, Texas, and California, this expansion is genuinely just getting started. See you in the next one.